We have had weeks and weeks of Donald Trump saying, James Comey told me I wasn't personally under investigation. He said it once, he said it twice, he said it three times, according to Donald Trump. And James Comey did confirm at his testimony last week that at a particular point in time, months ago, that was true. Trump was not under investigation. And now, you must know where I'm going with this. Coinciding with Donald Trump's 71st birthday, we've learned that Donald Trump is under personal investigation for obstruction by special prosecutor Robert Mueller. And this is sort of getting lost in the never-ending constant sequence of news. This is arguably the biggest news on the Russia scandal in quite some time. And of course, Donald Trump is calling it fake. Officials are saying that special prosecutor Robert Mueller's investigation into Russia and Trump collusion now includes looking at Donald Trump personally for possible obstruction of justice. The president of the United States is personally being investigated. And this investigation is, in some way, shape, or form, about a year old at this point. And rather than shrinking, Pat, it is growing. It is growing with every bit of news that we get. And now it personally includes the president of the United States. This does not change or contradict that James Comey told Trump months ago that he was not under investigation. At the time, that was presumably true. James Comey is no longer in charge. Months have passed, and now Donald Trump is under investigation. And 5 people briefed on the interview requests that have been out there so far related to this, speaking on the condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to actually discuss this, are saying that Daniel Coates, current director of national intelligence, Admiral Mike Rogers, head of the NSA, and Rogers's recently departed deputy, Richard Leggett, have agreed to be interviewed by Robert Mueller as early as this week.
And really, this idea that Trump wasn't personally being investigated was bogus to begin with, because, of course, his campaign was being investigated. And who's at the head of the campaign? The candidate, Donald Trump.
Yeah, so while technically speaking, it appears to have been true that at a certain point Trump wasn't being looked at as an individual, he was, of course, part of the broader investigation into his campaign. Now, what's the response from Donald Trump's lawyer, Mark Kasowitz? No surprise. Focus on the fact that this was leaked rather than the substance. Par for the course. A quote from Mark Corallo, who's a spokesman for Trump's attorney, Mark Kasowitz, said, "The FBI leak of information regarding the president is outrageous, inexcusable, and illegal." Donald Trump's comments on the matter, they came at 6:55 a.m. this morning via Twitter, naturally, saying, quote, "They made up a phony collusion with the Russian story, found zero proof, so now they go for obstruction of justice on the phony story." Nice. Also adding via Twitter, "You were witnessing the single greatest witch hunt in American political history, led by some very bad and conflicted people. Hashtag make America great again." Given how concerned Donald Trump has been for months as to whether or not he was personally under investigation, it's hard for me to imagine, Pat, that he's taking this news particularly well. And remember, Comey warned him. Comey was asked by Donald Trump in one of those Oval Office meetings, "Can you go out there and say that I'm not under investigation?" And James Comey said, "Listen, you should think about whether you want me to do that, because once you do that, you are, number one, putting that conversation into the public, and you are creating a duty to correct, where if I go out there as FBI director, per James Comey, and say Trump is not under investigation personally, if that were to change at some point in the future, Comey would then have a duty to correct that and say, those circumstances have changed." Exactly what Comey warned Trump about is what is happening.
And that had to do with the collusion angle. Now we're approaching this obstruction of justice angle.
Yep.
And Chris Ruddy, who's one of Trump's close friends, say that he's floating the idea of firing special counsel Robert Mueller.
That's right.
If that was to happen, I think the trains would fall off.
Trains off the rails, the paintings falling off the wall, the you-know-what hitting the fan.
Whatever analogy you want
Whatever analogy you want to use is what would take place. But I don't want to get hyperbolic. We all need to remember that even if evidence of crimes is found against Donald Trump, This is very complex because the Justice Department has held for a very long time, not just under Donald Trump, that it would be incredibly difficult, if even potentially inappropriate, to indict a sitting president. It would depend on Congress to look at the evidence and say, this evidence warrants starting impeachment proceedings. And if that happens, Republicans would find themselves in a very complex situation. Complex in the sense that they'll be thinking of their own reelection chances. Morally, if you're a sensible elected official and an ethical elected official, and you're presented with evidence of criminality by the president, you say impeach regardless of party. Republicans, like most elected officials, it's not that Democrats are different, would have to decide what's worse: impeaching a president from my own party or ignoring the potential crimes of a president of my own party. The answer will likely depend on Trump's approval rating at the time and how close we are to a re-election campaign.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that if the House was to impeach Trump, then it would be, of course, up to the Senate to convict.
Right.
And the Senate in that case is supposed to act as if they're a jury. And usually when you select a jury, you choose people who are going to be impartial and not aware of everything.
Not
That's
exactly
really
going to happen.
Senate.
No doubt about that. We are living in fascinating times. Trump personally under investigation now.